I attended my daughter's gender reveal party. She handed me the ultrasound proudly. Isn't she beautiful? I'm a radiologist. I looked at the image and my blood ran cold. My daughter Emily handed me the ultrasound image at 2:47 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. Her face glowing with the particular joy that only expectant mothers seem to radiate, and said the words that would change everything. Isn't she beautiful? I have been a radiologist for 22 years, board certified, fellowship trained in obstetric and abdominal imaging. I've looked at more ultrasounds than I've had real meals. I read them the way most people read traffic signs, instantly, instinctively, without a single neuron hesitating. And the moment my eyes fell on that glossy printout, the world inside my chest collapsed in silence. Because what Emily thought was her baby's profile, the sweet little curve of forehead and nose she had probably traced with her finger 100 times, wasn't a profile at all. It was something else entirely. Something solid where nothing solid should ever be. But my face didn't move. 20 years of delivering devastating news had trained that reflex out of me. You learn to bury your first reaction, to lock down every micro-expression, because one wrong flicker of panic can destroy someone's entire world before you even speak. Where did you get this done? I asked gently. Emily's smile widened, completely unaware of the earthquake detonating beneath my ribs. That new place in the mall plaza. Sweet Seeds Imaging. They do the 3D and 4D videos, and they give you a little heartbeat teddy bear afterward. It felt so much warmer than my OB's office. Not a hospital, not a licensed clinic, just a strip mall boutique with an ultrasound machine and no true training behind it. I forced myself to nod, told her the picture was lovely, told her I needed to grab something from my car. Anything to get away for a moment before the truth showed on my face. Inside the house, I found her husband, Aaron, cracking open a bottle of sparkling cider in the kitchen, humming, completely at peace, completely unaware. Aaron, I said, shutting the door behind us, we need to talk now. He raised an eyebrow, half amused. You're not about to lecture me about the cake being too sugary again, are you? I held up the ultrasound. Aaron, as this is not a baby. The bottle froze halfway to his lips. His whole expression went blank. One of those moments where the human brain just blue screens. What? It came out as a whisper. I pulled him into the laundry room, away from the noise of 50 happy people celebrating something that didn't exist. What Emily showed me isn't fetal tissue, I said. It's a solid mass. Wrong density, wrong shape, wrong position. Everything about this is wrong. He leaned against the washing machine like his knees had given out. But she felt her kick, he said, voice trembling. She said she felt her moving for weeks. Large masses can shift, I said quietly. They can press against organs. It can feel like kicking. She wouldn't know the difference. What are you saying? He asked. What is it? I'm saying Emily needs a real diagnostic scan at a real hospital tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. He looked toward the door, toward the laughter, the decorations, the pink and blue cupcakes, the giant reveal balloon waiting to burst with confetti. She'll be devastated, he whispered. She's planned this for months. She'll be alive, I said. That's what matters. He swallowed hard, the truth finally sinking in. Okay, how do we get her out of here without tipping her off? We let her have the reveal, I said. She deserves that moment. After that, we go. He nodded slowly. Even if it's the last happy moment she has for a while, he said. I couldn't bring myself to answer. We returned to the yard. The decorations were perfect. Emily had planned every inch of it. Pink and blue streamers twisted along the fence. A table overflowed with cookies shaped like tiny onesies. A giant black balloon floated like a swollen moon in the center of the lawn, waiting to explode into the illusion of a future that wasn't real. Emily saw me and waved. Dad, come stand by us. You're the one who should record the reveal. My hands shook as I lifted my phone. My daughter stood under the balloon, wearing the dress she had chosen just in case it's a girl. Aaron beside her, trying his best to smile through the terror I knew he felt. She held up the oversized pin. Okay, everyone, she said, glowing. Ready to find out if we're having a little princess or a little prince? The guests cheered. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The balloon burst. Pink confetti exploded into the sky, raining down across the lawn like a soft drifting snowfall. The crowd screamed. Emily cried. Aaron hugged her. Everyone celebrated the daughter they believed was coming. And I watched the pink confetti settle at my feet and felt my heart fracture sharp and quiet into pieces too small to pick up, because my daughter was not carrying a baby. And in a few hours, I would be the one who had to tell her. The pink confetti was still drifting through the air when the first crack appeared in my composure. Not visible from the outside. God knows I'd spent my entire career mastering stillness, but inside something had split. Not loudly, not violently, more like the quiet sound of fabric tearing somewhere in the dark. Emily was glowing in the center of the yard, both hands over her mouth, tears falling freely down her cheeks. Her friends were shrieking and hugging one another. Someone popped a bottle of sparkling cider that sprayed in a golden arc across the patio. The entire backyard felt electric with celebration, and I stood in the middle of it, knowing it was all built on nothing, on air, on illusion, on a lie handed to my daughter by a stranger who didn't know what they were doing. "Dad!" Emily shouted above the cheers. "Dad, are you recording?" I nodded, lifting the phone even though my hands were trembling. I filmed her, her joy, her innocence, her belief in a future that didn't exist. It felt like filming a memory that would become a wound. When the cheering finally calmed, Emily rushed toward me, confetti tangled in her hair, cheeks flushed and eyes sparkly with happiness. "A girl," she whispered, voice soft with awe. "A little girl, Dad, I knew it, I just knew it." I forced my lips into a smile that felt like it might split my face. "I'm very happy for you, sweetheart." She hugged me, pressing her swollen belly into me. And God, the grief that punched through my chest in that moment nearly dropped me to my knees. There was nothing inside that belly but a mass trying to kill her. A mass she believed was her daughter. I hugged her back. I held her so tightly I was afraid she'd notice something was wrong. But she didn't. She was too happy to see the storm forming in my eyes. The excuse. 2 hours later, the party was thinning out. People were eating the onesie-shaped cookies, taking photos with the leftover decorations, wrapping pink streamers around their wrists like bracelets. The giant balloon, now deflated and crumpled on the grass, lay like the remains of a celebration I wished I could erase from time. Aaron found me near the back fence, pretending to check my voicemail on the phone I had no intention of looking at. "Are you ready?" he whispered, voice barely audible. "No," I said honestly, "but we have to do it." I approached Emily, who was mid-conversation with her best friend, showing her the tiny pink booties she'd bought last week. She turned to me instantly. "Dad, don't tell me you're leaving early," she said with a childish pout that made her look heartbreakingly young. "I have a situation at the hospital," I lied. Lying to my daughter felt like swallowing glass. "I need to check in." Aaron offered to drive me. "You're working?" She frowned. "On the night of my reveal." "It won't take long," I said gently. "I'll be back before you know it." I would not be back. Not in the way she expected. Not with the world she believed she was living in. Emily sighed but nodded, hugging me again before I left. "Text me when you get there, okay? And call me before bed. I want to talk names. Names for a child who did not exist. God help me." The drive. Aaron drove. I sat in the passenger seat staring at the street lights flashing through the windshield, feeling my pulse hammer in my throat. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence in the car was thick, heavy, suffocating. It felt like the quiet before a crash, stillness stretched too thin. Halfway to the hospital, Aaron finally whispered, "What if we're wrong?" I didn't look at him. I couldn't. If I thought there was even a 1% chance I was wrong, I said, "We wouldn't be in this car." He swallowed hard. "I don't know how to tell her. I don't know how to look at her and—" "You don't have to tell her," I said quietly. "I will. You're her father," he whispered. "She trusts you more than anyone." And that made the ache sharper, deeper. Trust breaks differently when you're the one holding the hammer. A vibration buzzed in the cup holder. Aaron grabbed his phone and looked down at the screen. "It's Emily," he said. His voice cracked. "She wants to know if you're feeling okay." He typed back before I could answer. "All good. Traffic is slow. Back soon. Love you." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Then her message popped up. "Okay. Don't forget we have brunch with Mom tomorrow. Love you too." Brunch. As if tomorrow would be normal. As if anything would ever be normal again. Mercy General. We pulled into Mercy General Medical Center, the largest hospital in our region, the place where I had trained, taught, and diagnosed for half my life. I had called ahead. Doctor. Rebecca Collins, my closest colleague and the most precise obstetric radiologist I had ever known, was waiting for us just inside the emergency entrance. Beside her stood Dr. Marcus Hill, a gynecologic oncologist I trusted with my own life. The look on Rebecca's face when she saw us told me everything. She understood exactly how bad this was. "Where is she?" she asked as soon as we stepped inside. "In the parking lot," I said. "She thinks we're dropping by for a work thing." Rebecca nodded once. "Bring her in. We'll take it from there." The lie that broke everything. When we reached the car, Emily was already stepping out of the back seat, confusion tightening her features. "What are you guys doing? Why are we at the ER?" Her voice was soft, uncertain, a crack appearing in her trust. I said, my throat tightening. "We need to talk inside." She looked from me to Aaron, searching our faces for answers. "Is something wrong? Did something happen at the party? Is someone hurt?" "No," I said. "No, nothing like that. Please, just come inside." Her hands shook as she followed us into the consultation room. When she saw the doctors waiting, her whole body tensed. "Dad, what is this? Why are there doctors here?" I felt something in me tear. "Emily," I said gently, "I need you to trust me. I need you to let them do a real ultrasound." "What? Why, Dad? I already had..." That place you went to isn't medical, I said softly. They're not licensed. They're not trained. She stared at me blank, unblinking. What are you saying? I took her hands. They were freezing cold. I'm saying, the image they gave you might not be what you think it is. Her lips trembled as her eyes filled. You think I'm not pregnant? I think we need to find out right now, please. The silence that followed felt like a lifetime. Finally, she whispered, okay. The scan. Rebecca performed the scan personally. I stood in the doorway, gripping the frame so tightly my hand went numb. Aaron stood behind Emily, one hand on her shoulder, the other covering his mouth. The machine hummed softly. The screen flickered. Rebecca moved the transducer slowly, deliberately. Then I saw it. The mass. Large, dense, unmistakable. Growing like a dark planet in her pelvis. Emily stared at the screen, confused. Where's the heartbeat? She whispered. Why can't I hear her heartbeat? Her voice cracked like thin glass. Rebecca's silence told my daughter the truth before the words did. Emily, Dr. Hill said gently, stepping forward. There is no heartbeat. There is no fetus. This is a large ovarian tumor, and it needs to be removed as soon as possible. For a moment, Emily didn't breathe. Then she whispered, No, you're wrong. I heard her. I heard her heartbeat. That was a recording, Rebecca said, or the sound of blood flow through the mass. I'm so sorry. Emily turned to me, betrayal and agony merging on her face. You knew, she whispered. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I suspected, I said, my voice breaking. I wasn't certain. I needed real imaging. I needed to be absolutely sure before I... Why didn't you tell me? She cried. Why did you let me celebrate? Let everyone cheer? Let me believe. Because you deserved that moment, I said. And because I couldn't destroy your world based on a suspicion. I needed to know. She collapsed into Aaron's arms, sobbing. He held her tightly as his own tears fell onto the top of her head. Rebecca quietly documented the findings. Dr. Hill went to schedule the operating room for the next morning. And I stood there watching my daughter break open, knowing I was the one who had held the hammer. The surgery was scheduled for 7:15 a.m. the next morning. I didn't sleep the night before. I sat in the recliner of my study, the house lit only by the soft glow of a lamp I hadn't bothered to turn off. Emily's ultrasound image, the image, was still in my pocket. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, but I couldn't look at it either. Every time I felt the paper against my leg, it felt like guilt had taken physical form. At 5:40 a.m., I drove to Mercy General through empty streets washed pale by the desert dawn. Henderson looks unreal at that hour, quiet, colorless, almost suspended in time. I parked and walked into the hospital as if heading toward a sentence I deserved. Emily and Aaron were already in pre-op. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, wearing the thin hospital gown, her hands folded in her lap. She looked small in a way that terrified me. When she saw me, she didn't speak. She just leaned forward and let me hold her. Dad, she whispered into my chest, I thought I did everything right. You did, I said softly. You did everything right. But I talked to her, she murmured, voice trembling. Every night. I told her things, I planned things, I loved her. I know, I whispered. That love was real. What you felt was real. What you wanted was real. She nodded against my shoulder, silent tears warming my shirt. Aaron stood on the other side of the room, pretending to scroll his phone, but his hands were shaking so badly the screen kept tilting sideways. He had the look of a man trying to keep himself together for someone else, holding his grief like a secret inside his ribs. The nurse came in to start prepping Emily. You can stay with her until they take her back, she said softly. I pulled a chair to her side and took her hand. She didn't let go. To the surgery. When they finally wheeled her toward the OR, Aaron and I followed until we reached the double doors we weren't allowed to cross. The moment she disappeared behind them, Aaron's composure cracked. Michael, he said, wiping his face. I don't know how to be strong for her. She keeps asking what she did wrong. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You tell her the truth, nothing. She did nothing wrong. Life can be cruel for no reason at all. But she will survive this, and so will you. We sat in the waiting room, two men who loved the same woman in different ways, broken in the same direction, listening to the same ticking clock. Time in hospital waiting rooms moves differently. It stretches, breaks, loops. A nurse finally walked out at 8:32 a.m. Family of Emily Turner? We both stood so fast our chairs fell backward. The surgery went well, the nurse said. Dr. Hill removed a dermoid tumor approximately the size of a small melon. It was benign. Her ovary was preserved. She's stable in recovery. Air rushed out of my lungs in a violent exhale I didn't know I had been holding. Aaron covered his face and cried openly. Relief, grief, exhaustion blending together. I just stood there, hands on my hips, staring at the floor as my throat burned. I had seen countless patients survive far worse, but watching your child come close to dying isn't something training prepares you for. It tears through you with a violence no medical textbook can describe. "Can we see her?" I asked when I found my voice. "Soon," the nurse said. "She's still waking up. Recovery." When we finally saw her, she was groggy, pale, and whispering words that didn't quite make sense yet. But her eyes opened when she heard my voice, and she reached for my hand. "It hurts," she murmured. "I know," I whispered. "But it's out. It's gone, Em. You're safe now." A single tear slipped from the corner of her eye. "Dad, I don't feel pregnant anymore." The simplicity of that sentence broke me. Because she wasn't grieving the loss of a child. She was grieving the loss of a belief, a future, a reality she had held so close to her heart that it had become part of her. Psychologists call it disenfranchised grief, the kind of loss the world doesn't recognize because it doesn't fit into neat boxes. There would be no funeral, no sympathy cards, no casseroles from neighbors, no rituals to make sense of the emptiness. Just silence, just absence, just the hollow space where hope had lived. Aaron sat next to her, wiping her forehead with a towel, eyes red but gentle. "I'm right here, sweetheart," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." I watched them, and for the first time since all of this began, I felt fear give way to something else, something deeper, quieter. A kind of sorrow that didn't roar. It just settled. There's the first night home. Emily was discharged the next afternoon. I brought her home myself. She didn't talk much. She walked slowly, her hand pressed gently to her abdomen. The house felt too bright, too clean, too filled with remnants of a life she no longer recognized. A half-finished list of baby names pinned to the fridge, a tiny pink onesie draped over the arm of the couch, a baby on board sticker on the kitchen counter. She stared at each of them like she was looking at someone else's belongings. "Do you want me to put these away?" I asked softly. She shook her head. "Not yet." We sat on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder like she used to do when she was 5 and scared of thunderstorms. "Dad," she whispered, "was I stupid?" My chest tightened. "Absolutely not. But how did I not know?" Her voice cracked. "How did I not feel that something was wrong?" "Because you believed in the best-case scenario," I said. "Because you wanted to be a mother. Because you trusted. That isn't stupidity, Em, that's humanity." She closed her eyes. The silence between us felt heavy but honest. And that was the moment I realized the hardest part wasn't over. The surgery had taken the tumor out of her body. But the aftermath, the grief, the confusion, the guilt, would take far longer to remove. Maybe months. Maybe years. And I would have to carry the weight of knowing I was the one who let her celebrate before I tore the truth open. I would have to live with being both the person who saved her life and the person who broke her heart. The first week after Emily's surgery was the kind of quiet that feels unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. She barely spoke. Aaron barely slept. And I kept replaying one question over and over in my head. How many other families had been lied to? Because the place that had given Emily her ultrasound, Sweet Seeds Imaging, wasn't just a bad luck story. It was a threat. A danger wrapped in pastel colors and false reassurance. A business masquerading as healthcare. And I couldn't shake the thought that if I hadn't been there that day, if Emily had shown that image to anyone else, she might not even be alive right now. One night, after Emily had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from pain medication and tears, I opened my laptop. A search bar blinked back at me. I typed, "Sweet Seeds Imaging Complaints." At first, nothing seemed unusual. A Facebook page with cheerful photos. A website promising memories that last a lifetime. Prices for bonding sessions. Keepsake ultrasounds. Gender confirmations at 14 weeks. Then I scrolled. Buried beneath 5-star reviews from excited, expectant mothers were comments that chilled me. They said my baby was fine, but he wasn't. My doctor says their measurements were completely wrong. Heartbeat recording sounded odd. They ignored something on the screen and told me not to worry. And then the one that made my stomach drop. They told me I was having a girl. My doctor later told me I wasn't pregnant at all. My hands went cold on the trackpad. This wasn't just Emily. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. Digging deeper. I spent hours messaging the women who had left concerning comments. Most didn't respond. Some blocked me, probably assuming I was a scammer. But a few, just a few, wrote back. A woman named Caroline told me they had missed her son's congenital heart defect. Another, Melissa, said they told her she was carrying twins. One of those twins was actually an empty gestational sac. A husband named David said his wife lost their baby at 20 weeks, something a real ultrasound tech should have detected signs of weeks earlier. And shockingly, a young woman named Hannah, only 21, told me they hadn't noticed her ectopic pregnancy. Her fallopian tube ruptured before she made it to the ER. She survived, just barely, but she would never naturally conceive again. I sat back in my chair, staring at the messages, feeling a cold, heavy dread settle in my bones. This was no longer about Emily. This was systemic harm. This was negligence dressed up as celebration. And someone was responsible. The owner. With a little digging through public records, I found her. Brenda Maddox, 53 years old, previously worked as a medical assistant. License revoked 8 years ago for falsifying patient chart entries. Now she was running a keepsake ultrasound studio with zero medical oversight. My blood boiled. She wasn't ignorant. She wasn't misinformed. She knew she wasn't allowed to practice anything resembling medicine. And yet she'd been handing out ultrasound photos, telling mothers everything looks perfect, playing fake heartbeat recordings, and cashing checks while putting lives at risk, including my daughter's. I felt an anger I hadn't felt in years, quiet, focused, cold, the kind of anger that transforms into purpose. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall. I had to do something. Upper the call. The next morning, while Emily slept, I dialed the number for the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. A man named James Hollister, a compliance officer with a calm voice and a tone that said he'd heard everything before, answered. "How can I help you today?" "My name is Dr. Michael Turner," I said. "I need to report a keepsake ultrasound studio operating without medical licensure. They endangered my daughter's life." The pause on the other end was long. "Dr. Turner, we're aware of several such businesses. Do you have documentation?" "I have images. I have testimony. I have names of affected families." Another silence. "Can you send everything to my office? We need official complaints to take action." "I'll do more than that," I said. "I'll bring them in myself." The reporter. But I knew the board alone wasn't enough. People like Brenda don't stop until everyone knows what they've done. So I called a reporter I had seen cover medical fraud years earlier, Victoria Hale from Channel 7 News in Las Vegas. Hard-hitting, sharp, unafraid. When she picked up, her voice was brisk. "This is Victoria. Ms. Hale, this is Dr. Michael Turner. I have a story you'll want to hear." By the time I finished explaining, she was already grabbing a pen. "You have proof?" "Yes." "You have patient testimony?" "Yes." "And you're willing to go on record?" I hesitated. Not because I doubted myself, but because going public meant dragging Emily's trauma into the light. "Yes," I said. "If it stops this from happening again, yes." "We'll meet tomorrow," she said. "Bring everything." And the weight of telling the truth. Before bed, I checked on Emily. She was lying on her side, curled up beneath a blanket, her cheeks still wet from earlier tears. Aaron sat beside her, holding her hand as though letting go might cause her to disappear. I thought about telling her what I was planning, about the board, the reporter, the investigation, but she was too fragile, too raw, too lost in the grief of losing a child she'd never had. So I kept it to myself just for one more night, just until the world stopped spinning. I sat on the edge of the bed, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. "I love you, Emily," I whispered. Her eyes fluttered open for a moment. "Dad, am I going to feel normal again?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yes," I said softly. "Not today, not tomorrow, but you will, I promise." She closed her eyes again, breathing slowly, heavily, and I realized I would burn the world down before letting someone hurt her like this again. And tomorrow I would start with Sweet Seeds imaging. By the time the sun came up the next morning, I had compiled everything: screenshots, testimonies, copies of messages, Emily's false ultrasound, and the real diagnostic images from Mercy General. A stack of truth so heavy it felt like evidence in a homicide case. Because in a way, that's what this was. Not murder, but the killing of trust, of safety, of futures. At 9 a.m., I walked into the office of the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. James Hollister, the compliance officer, met me in the lobby. He was a short, sturdy man in his 50s with a calm face and eyes that looked permanently tired, like he'd heard too many stories that ended badly. "Dr. Turner," he said, shaking my hand. "Let's review what you brought." We sat at a conference table stacked with manila folders and legal pads. I spread out everything like laying weapons on the table before a battle. James picked up Emily's keepsake ultrasound first. He studied it for less than 2 seconds before saying, "This is not a fetal structure." "I know," I said, "but they told her it was." He examined the Facebook screenshots next, the comments from frightened mothers, the contradictory measurements, the claims that everything looked perfect, even when later medical scans showed severe issues. Then he read through the testimonies I'd collected. Melissa's ignored malformation, Caroline's missed defect, David's wife losing a baby no one had warned them about, Hannah's ruptured ectopic pregnancy and permanent infertility. Each one hit like a blow. James finally leaned back in his chair and exhaled sharply. "This is enough," he said. "More than enough." "Enough to shut them down?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "But we have to do this by the book, and we have to do it today." The reporter arrives. At noon sharp, I met Victoria Hale in the parking lot of the studio where Sweet Seeds Imaging operated. Her news van was parked discreetly across the lot, her cameraman setting up equipment inside the vehicle. She stepped out wearing a navy blazer and an expression that belonged to someone who smelled a story worth sinking her teeth into. Dr. Turner, she greeted. I reviewed your materials. If what you say is accurate, this could be one of the largest unlicensed imaging fraud cases in Nevada. It is accurate, I said. Every word. You ready to go on camera? I took a breath. This wasn't about embarrassment or family privacy anymore. This was about stopping real harm. Yes, I said, let's do it. We filmed the interview in the van, the windows discreetly covered. My voice shook only once, when I described the moment Emily asked me where her baby's heartbeat was. Afterward, Victoria closed her notebook and nodded with a gravity I hadn't seen earlier. They're going to face consequences for this, she said. I promise. On the raid, at 3:16 p.m., 2 state board investigators and a sheriff's deputy arrived. They asked me to stay behind until they cleared the building. Through the tinted window of the news van, I watched officials approach the front door of Sweet Seeds Imaging. It was surreal. Pink walls, teddy bears in the window, a chalkboard sign reading "Welcome Future Moms." It looked like a place built for joy, but its foundations were lies. The investigators walked inside. Through the open door, I heard a woman's voice, sharp, defensive. I recognized it from the Facebook Live videos Emily had replayed weeks earlier. Brenda Maddox. What is this? She demanded. You can't just barge in here. James stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. Ms. Maddox, we have verified reports of unlicensed medical activity. This facility is ordered to cease operation immediately. No, she snapped. No, this is just bonding, just photos. This isn't medical. You told my daughter she was pregnant, I said, stepping out of the van. Her eyes snapped to mine, confused at first, then calculating. I don't know who you're... You handed her a picture of a tumor, I said, and you told her it was her baby. For a moment, her facade cracked. Then she straightened her shoulders. I don't diagnose anything. I don't practice medicine. They sign a form saying this is entertainment. Entertainment doesn't kill people's futures, I said, and it doesn't almost kill their bodies. The sheriff stepped forward. Ms. Maddox, you will have the opportunity to speak with legal counsel. For now, this facility is closed until further notice. She started to protest, but the words tangled in her throat. The investigators covered the ultrasound machine, sealed the drawers, photographed every room. Victoria recorded footage after they cleared her to film. The entire scene felt strangely cinematic. A life unraveling, a truth exposed, a wrong finally forced into the light. But there was no satisfaction in it, only a deep, weary ache, because none of this would undo what Emily had been through. None of it would give her back the months she spent believing she was carrying a daughter. None of it would erase the pain of waking up from surgery to a truth she didn't deserve. Justice was necessary, but justice wasn't healing. The call home. On my drive back to Emily's house, my phone buzzed. It was her. Dad? She said, her voice small, frayed. Are you on your way home? Yes, I said. I'll be there soon. She hesitated. Can you bring soup? I don't know why, but I'm really craving soup. I swallowed a wave of emotion. Of course, I said softly. I'll bring you whatever you need. Okay, she whispered. I don't really want to be alone. You won't be, I said. Not now, not ever. I hung up, staring at the steering wheel as the weight of everything settled deeper into my bones. What I had done today mattered. People would be safer. Families would be protected. A dangerous business had finally been stopped. But none of it erased the fact that the person who deserved safety the most, my daughter, had been the one who paid the highest price. And that was something I would carry for the rest of my life. Healing never arrives the way you expect it to. It doesn't walk in with clarity or reassurance. It doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it comes in fragments, small, almost invisible shifts that don't look like healing at all until one day you realize you're no longer breaking every time you breathe. For Emily, healing started with silence, not peace, not acceptance, just silence. The kind that lingers in the corners of a home after grief has torn through it, leaving behind echoes of what was supposed to be. She spent the first month barely speaking. She would sit in the nursery they'd painted, pale peach walls, white furniture, a tiny crib in the corner, and just stare, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. Aaron would hover in the doorway, unsure if entering would help or hurt. I visited every day, brought soup, changed her bandages, sat with her when she cried without any sound, sat with her when she didn't cry at all. Grief isn't linear. It loops, it repeats, it flares up randomly, sometimes triggered by something as small as a song on the radio or a commercial showing a smiling pregnant woman rubbing her stomach. Emily avoided the maternity aisle at every grocery store, avoided baby clothes, avoided anything pink. For weeks she avoided herself. Bam, the therapy. It was her therapist, Dr. Amanda Kellogg, who finally gave her permission to grieve something the world couldn't see. This is a loss, she told Emily on the first session. A real loss, and you are allowed to mourn it. Emily blinked as if hearing the idea for the first time. But there was no baby, she whispered. I feel stupid grieving something that didn't exist. Dr. Kellogg shook her head. The baby existed to you, that is enough. Emily cried then. Not the silent tears that carved down her cheeks those early weeks, but heavy shaking sobs that racked her entire body. I was in the waiting room. I heard them. Every sound hit like a hammer, but I knew it was the beginning of her finding her way back. Mother trial. Months later, when Brenda Maddox stood in a courtroom and listened to the charges read aloud, unlicensed practice, fraud, reckless endangerment, I was there. So was Emily. She insisted. I want her to see me, she said. I want her to know what she did. The prosecutor outlined case after case, mistake after mistake, family after family harmed by Sweet Seed's imaging. Brenda sat stiff, eyes darting, face pale. Then Emily took the stand. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't tremble. She spoke quietly, clearly, honestly. I loved a baby who wasn't real, she told the court. I talked to her, I planned for her, I dreamed for her. And then I found out she never existed, and that the thing growing inside me could have killed me. She looked directly at Brenda. You stole my joy. You stole months of my life. You stole the person I was before all of this. Silence filled the courtroom. Brenda looked away. The jury found her guilty on all counts. As they read the verdict, Emily reached for my hand under the table. Her fingers trembled, but her grip was steady. Dad, she whispered, I think I can breathe again. The call that changed everything. 6 months after the trial, on a quiet Wednesday morning, my phone rang. It was Aaron. Can you come over? He asked, voice thick with something I couldn't identify. Now, please. My heart dropped. I grabbed my coat, keys, and rushed to the car. When I arrived, the house looked different. Not in decoration, but in atmosphere. The air felt warmer, softer. Something had shifted. Emily met me at the door. Her eyes were red, but not from sadness. She was smiling. Small, hesitant, but real. Dad, she said softly. Come in. In the living room, a woman from an adoption agency stood next to a carrier. Inside was a newborn wrapped in a pale yellow blanket, tiny fingers curled into perfect fists. Emily knelt beside the carrier and lifted the baby with trembling hands. Dad, she whispered, voice breaking, this is Sophie. The room tilted. My breath caught. She's 3 weeks old, Emily said. And as of this morning, she's ours. Aaron stepped beside her, eyes wet, voice barely steady. We wanted to tell you first. I stared at the baby, her blinking dark eyes, her dimpled chin, the way she softened instantly against Emily's chest as she held her. Not imagined, not hoped for, not an illusion. Real. Emily kissed the baby's forehead and whispered, she feels right. I don't know how to explain it. I know she's supposed to be ours. My throat tightened so painfully I had to look away for a moment. Because here, in front of me, was the ending I didn't dare imagine. Not perfect, not neat, not a replacement, but something new, something honest, something earned through fire. I walked toward them slowly, as though approaching a miracle I might accidentally disturb. Can I whispered, can I hold her? Emily placed Sophie gently into my arms. I felt her warmth against my chest, her tiny breaths, her weight, light but steady. And for the first time since the day Emily handed me that false ultrasound, the world no longer felt like it was ending. It felt like it was beginning again. Not the life we expected, not the one we dreamed, but a life we built together after the ruins. A life that in its own quiet way felt like healing, felt